having heard about legal perspectives about designs law, some of the history of designs, some state library perspectives, we'd now like to move on to thinking about some of the industrial applications of 3D printing. Dr. Brett Dale is a Group Chief Executive at MTA Queensland and is a very dynamic and innovative leader thinking about how various disruptive technologies might affect the automotive industry. And he's been a good collaborator at QT for a number of different matters. So we're kind of keen to have his perspective on ways in which 3D printing might affect the automotive industry, whether for good or for ill. Dr. Brett Dale.
Thanks, mate. So listening to the previous speakers, I can firstly say that it can justify why there is a profession of law for us, given that we've got the business context and we tend to apply things because we feel it's the right thing as opposed to whether we can do the right thing. And this is one level of technology that's definitely going to challenge us all with regards to how we apply it and maximise our opportunity in business. Sorry, is that on? Thank you. So as much as I love technology, it needs to be autonomous too, by the way. That's definitely something I'll declare up front. As far as being here today, it is a great opportunity for us to engage with academia. There's always been a disconnect with business and industry and academia and even government, the regulators. I've got to say in the last 12 months, since I've been back in industry, the collaboration between us and QUT has been outstanding, both in the technological space and in the law space. So, Matt, thanks for having us here again today. It is a pleasure to be talking things that are really important to our industry. Our industry impacts on the whole of society. Cars and vehicles are almost a necessity like water and food nowadays. But the reality is we are an industry that's subject to a mass of disruption in the near future. And 3D printing is only second to driverless technology in autonomous vehicles. It's huge, and certainly in preparation for speaking today, looking at the research, even when I compare back to looking 6 months ago, the evolution of the technology that's available to industry is phenomenal just in 6 months. I think, for me to walk away from today, just based on preparing information, I've got some really good news for our industry to get ready and get ready fast, because there has been some movements in that space which will impact on our industry. Now, a couple of disclaimers. Firstly, I'm not a tech guru on the technology. I'm all about embracing technology and optimising business opportunities as a result of new emerging technology, and 3D printing is one of those. But do I understand how it works and where it applies? No, not necessarily. I'm an extreme optimist, so I think if you can imagine it, it can happen. And somewhere between what I'm saying and the naysayers are saying is probably a safe space to be. But certainly in my role as leading industry, I have a responsibility to motivate business to respond to emerging technologies, and this is one of those. So my spin in today's talk is a little different. It's not about, it probably makes very clear the gap and awareness of the legal application surrounding new technology, but it's certainly a perspective from business and how ready we are and the opportunities that we will be able to seize, hopefully, in preparation for this new technology. Sorry, is this not the... Told you, autonomous, it needs to be. Yep. So I wanted to give a brief snapshot of industry, and I'm sure you're familiar to some degree, at least as consumers. I want to talk about the new technology and why it's important to us as an industry, and the sectors of our industry that will be likely to be disrupted from this technology. I want to talk about what we see as opportunities out there, but what will protect those opportunities and what we should be doing in preparation for business to make sure the application of this new technology certainly secures the future of new business opportunities linked to three-dimensional printing. So for us, when we talk about what we're going to do, you will often hear the can do, and I like the Nike motto, certainly just do it. I think that is something that business does very well. And we tend to be, Uber and Airbnb are prime examples. If you talk about the regulators chasing their tails, that was a real learning curve for government. And we see government trying to preempt new technology, which is a good thing, and we see a different attitude towards what can be achieved with business. You know, business prosperity certainly contributes to the economy of the Australian people. So, you know, getting things right is important to all. You know, we've got the brains in academia, we've got the regulators in government, and we've got the can-do people in business, and working together is what will turn that around and make it a huge success. So as far as industry goes, the Motor Trades Association of Queensland has three groups sitting in there. We've got the industry peak body that's responsible for representing the entire value chain of automotive. We did exclude manufacturing, but as you're aware, manufacturing in Australia with regards to automotive is zilch as of October. But when you look at this new technology, are we going to reinvigorate that in another space? I think so. But we certainly represent the retail, service and repair sectors. So if you think about at the top of our value chain is new products, whether that be a motorcycle or a car, it's every bit of retail, service or repair business that falls out of that product that we represent. In Queensland, there's about 15,000 small to medium enterprises that service the population and service them well. They employ about 90,000 people across all areas of the industry. Certainly, the other two areas that we have a particular focus on is skilling and workforce solutions for industry. Our focus and interest there is making sure that we've got a skilled workforce that matches emerging technologies. And so within the group, we do have a vocational education and training arm that I look after, and that's the largest provider of automotive technical trades in Queensland. And it's probably the largest provider in Australia from a private training delivery perspective. We think it sits very nicely sitting in an industry peak body. Our interest is about making sure workforce needs and skills match that of business. So it's a great complement to what we're doing with the industry peak body. And the final arm that we've got is an innovation hub. And basically that's a recent initiative that we agreed to establish based on the level of technologies coming. So we're working with startups. When I say it's being created, as I talk, we are building a facility. I've been working with startups and identifying suitable applicants to work in that, and it will have a particular focus on businesses that can stimulate the competitive interest from business, because we are an industry that's very fortunate. The demand for cars and all things that falls out of those products are ongoing, but the reality is it's changing, and if business models don't change to adapt to the new technologies, they won't be around in the future. But if we work with them very closely, there will be the opportunity to maximise and create new business models and new business opportunities. We obviously have a real interest in sensible and responsible environmental products. So 3D printing for us is one of those. When we look at the impact on the environment based on current approaches to manufacturing, 3D printing is, from what I understand, a much more environmentally responsible way of producing products suitable to our industry. As far as the industry's understanding today about 3D printing, sure, it's been using it for prototyping and unique restorations in the area of motor racing or vintage car restoration. So 3D printing, there's an awareness that it's there. Are they aware as to the level of evolution that's taken place in the last couple of years? Certainly not. So it is high on our agenda to make sure business are aware and that things will be changing significantly. We see that the new tech is here under the metal printing capacity. Up until then, there was no capacity to compete with current approaches to manufacturing. And this new technology is something that, is just at the turning point. And what do we know about technology? As soon as we've got something that's good, it'll be excellent in no time. So there is real potential for business in this space. So that was using old technology as far as 3D printing goes, and it produced the entire car, less the tyres. So the capacity for our industry to rethink what it's doing is huge. If you think about the supply chain, starting with manufacturers producing a car and then importing them to or exporting them to countries, or us bringing them into Australia, there are some real gains under 3D printing if we can get to the point where it's cost effective to do those on site. If you think about our value chain, starting with the car dealers as you know them today, you go down to the valley and you look at the prestige dealerships on site, those sites will cost anywhere from $30 to $50 million, let alone the inventory that's in there. The margins in vehicles, new car products, are minimal, to be honest. As consumers, we think car dealers are making huge money in that space, but it's not. It's all the after-sales products that they make their money. And in that space, the ACCC is really focused on some of the recent conducts attached to financing and all that sort of thing. So business models need to become efficient for them to be sustainable in Australia. And this, no doubt, will, in the longer-term future, be a way in which we can do that with regards to decreasing the level of inventory and stock. The positive impact that will have on cash flow for business will be phenomenal. What we know about the technology now and why we think it's relevant, it's 100 times faster than what it was previously. We know that the machines themselves are currently 10 times cheaper than what they were just 2 years back. The products that are going in there under the metal printing capability is in fact 20 times cheaper than it was in the same time period. And when I look about the products going in there, so if technology already exists, when I'm talking and educating business to respond for opportunities, I think we need to be looking either side of the new technology. So if we think about end-of-life products at the moment, there's been restoration or repair and rebuild in our repair sector has been decreasing over the years. We just replace with new parts. Well, really, the ink to printing, and this is my lay term description of how this printing might work, those products may in fact become the ink for printing for new parts. So if you talk about sustainability and the impact on the environment, I think there's some really positive opportunities in the future. And Australia is no longer competing against other countries where labour markets were a lot cheaper to produce and get the manufacturing done. If you've got technology that is equally available based on the level of dollars invested into the equipment, investment, then Australia can again be a competitor in manufacturing. There's no doubt about it. We just need to nurture the idea, show industry and business that this is a real potential. And when you talk about the concern and focus on Mother Earth, there's some real benefits. I don't know the real capability about melt and replace and print the damaged panel to create the new panel, but I think it's an area of consideration that shows huge potential for us. The reason I've chucked in that point about the smartphones, there's lots of emerging technologies in business, and when we looked at small and independent repairers, we used to think there's no way they can afford to have access to that level of technology. The mobile phone gives the majority of independent repairers access to all diagnostic supports that links to approved manufacturer data and that sort of thing. We think the scanning, as far as its ability with the phone and trying to get a part in, that will serve a big part in making sure that all business has the opportunity to participate should they be interested in doing so. We know that by 2025 that everything on the globe will be 3D printed, if not more, based on the level of development in that space. What we don't know in business is how you legally regulate that. Certainly, if you look about other areas, and I've had this from business, you know, we're not ready for it. Cars will never be printed. You know, if you can do it on planes and you can do it in other areas like biomedicine, you can absolutely do it with the right technology on automotive and its components. So the big areas of our industry that will be completely disrupted. I mean, part suppliers are already doing that. If you think about manufacturers, they're producing their own tools through 3D printing, but the supply chain for parts is being impacted. We know, if you've been following any of the stuff in and around the ACCC and the illegal imports in and around parts, if you talk about consumer warranties and manufacturer warranties and guarantees and that sort of thing, in there is reference to the types and standards of parts that must be used by the repairer to ensure that the consumer has the right to claim against those warranties. Well, there are parallel parts issues already being disputed between manufacturers. There are the counterfeit parts where the product construct is different, which no doubt puts the consumer at risk, and it's fairly clear in the eyes of the law as to whether that would hold up as a suitable part to be utilised. When we talk about this printing ability for business, it's going to be a real temptation to do things cheaper as far as products go. And I think moving really quickly to create a legal framework and a regulatory framework that supports business so that they can do it in a safe way, looks after the consumer. There's no doubt consumer does own the car. There is data-owned issues relating that's linked to the manufacturer, and somewhere between those two, if we take away all the rights of the manufacturer, there'll be no incentive for them to invest in research and development. And we see the ACCC making reference to that now. So there's got to be a degree of understanding about what the manufacturer needs and what the consumer needs with regards to right of repair. And I think any conclusion about the outcome of the recent studies by the ACCC needs to take into account a compromise that, I guess, provides a return on investment for manufacturers so that technology continues to evolve and consumers get the product in which they want. If you take that away, they will be de-incentivised and products will be nowhere near as technically advanced as they are today. It's a big challenge for the legal fraternity, but certainly it's one that can be sorted. The other areas that we think are really got some huge opportunities, if you talk about the environmental impact of rubber and tyres and that sort of thing, evolving technology in cars, they're moving from combustion engines to electrical engines. The only other thing that has a real high maintenance and there's been a lack of innovation is tyres. We know that vehicles need them, so you don't have to drive demand. It just happens as a result of use. The reality is there are products being developed at the moment that will change that space completely, that will give tyres a life that exceeds the expectation of that $1 million kilometre travel without repair. So the technology's there, it's going to change, and I think, if I do have time, there is just a So, it may seem a little far-fetched, but the reality is if you think that cars are going to be on the roads without steering wheels in 2 to 5 years here in Australia, that technology is extremely believable. China's already producing and manufacturing completely biodegradable tyres through 3D printing. I don't know whether it's competing from a manufacturing perspective based on mass, but certainly they've got the capability and the design sorted. So if the technology continues to evolve, they will be manufacturing 3D printed tyres that will have a much greater life and will certainly be much more environmentally appropriate. So for us, we see 3D printing as being a complete opportunity for Australia, Queensland and industry. Definitely there's some gaps about how we use and apply it, and listening to some of the presentations today, I really got a sense of how ignorant business can be at times around design laws and intellectual property and that sort of thing. Even in our innovation space, I've got businesses and startups putting together a pitch, and I'm always prompting them about intellectual property. But the reality is it's like we make reference to the experts that are going to give them that example. And some of the stuff that we take for granted that sounds extremely basic are things that business will need to sort before we start operating in that space. So I think it's timely. If we've just got to the turning point, the technology will evolve in the next 12 months to 2 years. You'll see manufacturing in this space reignite, but we need to sort out the legal framework in which business can operate. The scope of industry will change significantly. The autonomous vehicle is going to be the biggest disruptor, but this will change workforce, it will change supply chains completely, it will change the way in which we manage our cash flow, it will allow businesses to have greater cash to reinvest in new business opportunities, because if you think about things like the demand for repair based on the transition from combustion to electrical or the tyres and that, the demand in that space is going to diminish. So business needs to be thinking about how they diversify to be sustainable, because the businesses as they are today in 2 to 5 years need to be almost completely different. There will be some businesses that will be able to extend what they're doing now in a more technical manner, but there will be others that need to reinvent themselves completely, and that's, I guess, our raison d'etre at the moment. That's what we want to do most, and we think to be able to do that successfully we need to be contemplating some of the less exciting things like the legal framework to support it. Like all good technology, I think the one thing that I've seen in the last 12 months, particularly being in the innovation space, is a real genuine commitment to open collaboration. We see businesses talking and sharing about things. You see it internationally that there is open intellectual property and access to it to ensure that some of the things like the environmental benefits are gained through sharing that technology. When you talk about the add-ons that people are doing with regards to softwares and existing businesses, people are contributing in ideas in that space. I think it's been phenomenal, and I see a genuine movement from government and academia to work with business, and QUT and us are a prime example. It's been outstanding, but it's necessary if we're really to maximise and put Australia back on the map and be a competitive manufacturer, then collaboration will be key. This is a later version of the car that we've seen earlier on, but it's certainly one that was at a motor show in 2016, so I presume the technology to support that vehicle was in fact 2015. Every aspect again except the tyres was printed on that particular vehicle. So for us, I guess what we do know, the changes that are inbound for us are greater than anything that's happened in industry before, other than the inception of cars back in its day. We know that we're not unique to other industries. 70 to 80% of our industry workforce is subject to change or be a new workforce. We know that our mechanical technicians are going to be more aligned with computer technicians. Do we transition those to new skills, or do we create a new workforce? So there's lots going on in that space. We know that existing businesses, there used to be an approach to continuous improvement and adjusting to new markets. The rate of change is saying that if you're going to change, respond and be a viable business, it's got to be huge, significant change to capitalise on emerging technologies that's coming. I think this period, as much as it can be intimidating, and I tend to use evolution and revolution to to audiences in a different manner. When I'm talking to business and I want them to feel secure, I say, hey, we're in a technical industry. This is an evolution of what you've been exposed to over the years. But if I'm trying to stimulate their response and say, hey, if you don't move now, you won't be around. I'll say it's a revolution, you need to move. And I'm really, personally, I'm struggling to work out and determine whether it is an evolution or a revolution. But whatever it is, it's exciting. And if we do work together and collaborate, I think business and Australia will benefit significantly. So that's it from me, I think.